So we just gave you a visual, and I want to play with this a little bit. We just gave you a visual of a crowd. So picture yourself. Imagine this. You're in a crowd, and the crowd is all moving in the same direction. You're shoulder to shoulder with people. You're packed in the same direction. Imagine what it's like to have everybody together. Now, imagine that all the people moving in that crowd are wearing orange and navy. Do you have any idea how close we were to not having this work out today? You do. Imagine everybody in that crowd is wearing orange and navy, and they're all pushing and they're filing. I had friends at the game last night, and they were sending me videos of this, and they're just massive amounts of people moving in one direction. Now, let's say that you're in that crowd, and everybody's moving in the same direction, except you're not wearing orange and navy. You're wearing, I don't know, pick a color. Okay, green. We'll go with that. And you're walking this side, and all of a sudden you're wearing green, and you realize you left your cell phone back at your seat. And so everybody's moving in this direction. Now, not only are you wearing green, but you're going against the grain, and you find yourself moving in a direction that everybody else is moving against. And there's resistance. There's awkwardness. There's this subtle sense that pulls at you that says, you don't belong here. And you find yourself saying things like, excuse me, pardon me, excuse me, pardon me, sorry, excuse me, oh, sorry, I'm trying to get through there. And to an extent, not with all the drama and certainly curse words, this is a little bit of what it feels like when we begin to follow Jesus, because everyone around us is heading in the same direction, and then we all of a sudden have been called to move in a different direction. And following Jesus isn't designed to make our life harder because we like pick up obscure rules or obscure dress or obscure, activities that begins to do this. And it's not because faith is unattractive. It's just that following Jesus can sometimes be a challenge, not because people are even hostile to us. Like, I mean, if you had green and yellow on last night, I pity for your life trying to get out of that place last night. No joke. But following Jesus means that you're moving in Jesus's direction. It's about a directional piece. Even when everything and everybody around you is moving in a different direction. So I think what happens is, and I don't think there's really hostility to Jesus per se as much as when I was coming out of high school and college. There was. I mean, there was just kind of this kind of angst against him. And I don't think what happens over time is people who follow Jesus, I don't think they like intentionally drift away from Jesus. And like everybody, for those of you, and I know not everybody has, but for those of you who have made a decision to follow Jesus, that moment you made that decision, like you were like, everything was clear. It was like a moment pause, and you were like, I get it now. I'm going to follow, and you're excited, and you're passionate, and you're making decisions about your life in that moment. And then over time, what happens is this drift type just kind of takes place. It's not because you want to drift. It's just life happens and life gets loud and expectations start to stack up and people try to get your attention and every spare moment gets filled up with somebody asking for our attention. And I've seen this happen year after year to good people. It's not like these are bad people that are doing bad things. These are good people that just, it's not that they've lost interest in Jesus. It's just, there's just a lot, right? There's just a lot. And here's the important thing I want us to kind of look at and follow over the next few weeks. Most people aren't resistant to Jesus. They're just exhausted, distracted, and honestly, I think most of us are just overstimulated. And we don't stop following Jesus because we stop believing. It's just that we're constantly noticing everything else. And so this morning, I want to kind of go back and look at there's a couple passages where Jesus invites people to follow him, to like follow him, to go where he's going, to move into the spaces and places where he is going for the purpose of kind of reorienting, reshaping their lives. And it's very countercultural, it's counter everything in these sense. And so I want to start with this passage where Jesus calls his first disciples. Matthew chapter 4 records this, and he says it this way. He says, as they were walking beside the Sea of Galilee, Jesus saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew, and they were casting a net into the lake. Why? Well, they were fishermen. All right, well, that makes sense. Jesus looks at them and says, "Come, follow me." Jesus said, "And I will send you out to fish for people." At once, immediately, they leave their nets and followed him. Going on from there, he saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. And they were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets to get ready to throw them back out into the water. And Jesus called them. And they left their boat and their father and followed him. And I think when we read this for the first time, even if we've read it for 100 times, when we read this, I still can't get over the fact that at some level this feels reckless, right? There's no follow-up questions. There's no 5-step plan. There's no clear mission vision. Why are we doing this? There's no, exit interview. And here's the thing I always get stuck on too. There's clearly no mother in the scene. They left their dad, and at some level I go, all right, whatever. Yeah, dad was like, all right, go, you can have fun. But there's no mom. A mom would have a whole different set of questions. Where are you going? How long are you going to be gone? Where are you going to sleep? When will we expect you home? Can we background check this guy before you start walking around the lake, right? How much money do you need? Do you have enough clothes packed? And I think when we look at this, in the first century, life was hard, but it's not fragmented. It's not a fragmented life. And I think, yes, we could say certain obvious things, like there were fewer choices, right? There were fewer voices. There were fewer things competing, lesser narratives competing for, what they should do and what mattered the most. And so when Jesus walks up to these pair of brothers and says, "Follow me," I think for the most part, history will now report that most people understood exactly what that meant. He wasn't adding complexity to their life. He was offering clarity to their life. Because fishing for them wasn't just a job. It wasn't just a hobby. It was a family system. That's who you were. You were fishermen. It was an economic future. It's how your family made a living last generation. It's how they're going to make a living in the next generation. It was like a social identity that takes place when you are identified as being a fisherman. People knew. So for Peter, Andrew, James, John, don't picture 21st century teenagers trying to find themselves. They weren't trying to find themselves. They knew who they were. And they were men that had responsibilities. They were men that had expectations. They were men that already knew the trajectory for their life. And so when Jesus comes and he says, "Follow me," he is not giving them a spiritual add-on. He's offering them a completely new direction to head in their life. And Jesus is not saying fishing is bad. So take a deep breath if you love to fish. This is not what this is about. He's just saying it's not bad. I'm not against fishing. In fact, they eat a lot of fish. As the New Testament story goes on, they're eating fish all the time, and they have to catch that fish to eat the fish. So it's not anti-fish or anti-fishing. It's just that this will no longer be the primary singular focus of your life. And everyone watching would have understood exactly what was happening. He was redefining where their identity comes from. And so they began walking against the flow of everything they had been working and walking towards before. Because in the first century, Jesus was known as a rabbi. In the first century, when you follow a rabbi, you rearranged your entire life. You adopted that rabbi's teaching. You imitated that rabbi's way of life. To follow rabbi in the way that we just watched this whole scene unfold meant you tried to become like that person, like that teacher. Which means for us, discipleship is for us trying to become more and more like Jesus. Just like James, just like John, just like Peter, just like Andrew. And I think one of the things we do is we often think sometimes discipleship, if I'm going to be a disciple of Jesus, we think it's about like some sort of agreement, or it's like a belief statement, or now you must memorize and behave, right? I mean, how many, don't raise your hand, don't do that. How many of you grew up like in a church where you thought most of Christianity was about memorizing and behaving? And you figured as long as you could memorize and as long as you behave, you'd get a sticker or an eraser or something, bugles with tang, something delicious, right? You would get something that would help you begin to do this. And yet when Jesus comes in this situation, he does not say, hey guys, I want you to agree with me. I want you to, think about me. I want you to remember me. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say, I don't want you to believe the right things about me, like Orthodox. I don't want you to believe things about me correctly. And so one of the things that I've been challenged with last year and I'm carrying into this year is my friend Dr. Thompson consistently asks like this question, like, where's the miracle in the story? And I think they're hard sometimes to find. Some of them are easy and some aren't. I think like the miracle in Matthew chapter 4, isn't that the fishermen left their nets and followed Jesus? I don't think that's a miracle. I think it's that Jesus believed fishermen could become something more without becoming something else. They didn't have to leave being human. They weren't even asked to clean up their life or go get more education. They just needed to change their direction. When Jesus said, follow me. Everybody else around you's going that way. And I want you to follow me. Before he teaches them anything, and don't get me wrong, he taught a lot. Before he taught anything, before he corrected them and said, no, Peter, no. Before he sends them anywhere, he says, be with me. Proximity close. Which begs the question for you, and it begs the question for me, and we're all in this together, is are we following Jesus, or are we just agreeing with him while we walk with the crowd? Because I think this is probably the most critical question about discipleship and about what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. Is, am I like agreeing with Jesus? I love it, it's nice, like it, love the songs, music's great, love that. Or am I following Jesus? Let's go to the next one, Matthew chapter 9. We pick up another guy in Matthew chapter 9. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at a tax collector's booth. Same thing. Follow me, he told him. And then Matthew got up and followed him. Now, Matthew's crowd is a little bit different, right? Tax collectors were aligned with Rome. They were seen as outcasts in the community. Rome had the occupying power with them. Tax collectors were financially secured but socially outcast. Financially secure, socially outcast. So for Matthew, this guy had everything to lose and really nothing to gain socially, nothing at all. The fisherman, that's a totally different story. But for this, he had everything to lose and really not much to gain on the upside. So when Matthew stands up, everybody around Matthew knows that this isn't about curiosity. He's not going through a phase. This isn't some like midlife crisis or something. This is a decision of direction for the purpose of his life. Because Matthew makes a decision to unfollow an entire system. And I think this is what makes Jesus' invitation so powerful. Again, Jesus does not start with theology. He starts with movement. Getting the feet to move. And here's what I think. This is me, this isn't Matthew, this isn't Peter, it's not the Bible. Here's what I think. I think in a world that's full of religious rules and political pressure and survival anxiety, Jesus offers clarity. There was one rabbi, one direction, one invitation, or for some, you may say one call, one invite, one opportunity. And I think people, so far we're up to 5, these 5 guys responded not because it was going to make their life easier, but because the invitation of Jesus was so clear. So now let's fast forward. Let's put our sandals away and our togas or whatever they wore. Let's fast forward 2,000 years. And let's kind of like affirm a couple things. One, I don't think, and you just came off the holidays, so you may have different experience than I did, but probably. But I don't find too many people that are hostile to Jesus today. True? I mean, there are. I don't know people mad at God, but I just don't meet many people that are like, man, I hate that Jesus guy. He's just, man, what a tool. I don't run into people that have that kind of attitude or belief or even like casually suggesting kind of stuff like that. In fact, surveys consistently show Jesus is admired across all belief systems. Even skeptics describe him as wise, compassionate, and inspiring. Even skeptics. So I don't think the issue is aversion to Jesus in the circles that we're a part of. It's just about attention. Does he have our attention? Because you and I, we live in the most influenced generation in human history. Here's what the data tells us about our generation. And like, you already know this, you live it, you just don't like it, and then you feel like, oh my gosh, here we go again. I know, but it's just true. The average adult, some of you got to figure out where you land on that, because some of you still act like it, but adult, right? The average adult consumes 7 to 10 hours of digital content per day. I'm not on my phone right now. I didn't say phone. Digital content. And what we're unaware of, and this isn't like beating you up, all this, just awareness. If you're gonna make decisions about your life, you need to be aware of where current things are. What this means is you are being formed as a disciple. You are being formed 7 to 10 hours a day. Your heart, your mind, your soul is being formed. The average, some of you are above average. The average person is exposed to thousands of messages daily that are competing for your allegiance. Those are just ads. No. It's just a post, it's just a blog. No. It's things that are competing for what's gonna be your allegiance. The algorithms in your life, they're not neutral. They are designed to capture and keep your attention. That's why they're there. Big companies and corporations don't make money if you stop scrolling. So the question isn't, do you believe in Jesus? I'm going to take a broad stroke. By virtue of you coming in here, you're at least interested. The real question is, who or what is shaping your direction? Who has ultimate say in shaping who and what you're going to be and become? Now, let's go back to the first century. Much easier to talk about. In the first century, the crowd was very visible. Very easy to see the crowd in the first century. It was very easy to see who you were walking with because people walked in groups. Like, okay, here's Jesus's group, and then we have, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and oh, there's the fishermen, and oh, here's the Roman group, and oh, like you could see. Last night at the game, you could see where people's allegiance were. A little bit of green, a lot of not green. It's visible. Today, for most of us, unless we're at a sporting event, the crowd isn't as clear. It's not as clear as it was in the first century. Because with notifications that come to you privately and personally, with expectations that nobody else knows about in your life except for you because you have to deal with those on a daily basis, with metrics that you're consumed by about how things need to be done and what your goals and measurements are for this, with schedules and calendars and comparison and consumption. Be clear, we're not rejecting Jesus. We're just overcommitted, overstimulated, and over-influenced. And I think sometimes we assume incorrectly that people walk away from Jesus or diminish their life in Jesus or forget about Jesus because they disagree with Jesus. I don't know if that's really the case. I think sometimes we drift because other things are shaping our direction. And Jesus still comes alongside, up next to, in front of, and says the same thing, follow me. So, week 1, we got 3 weeks of this. Aren't you so excited? It's great. Week 1. I am. Been looking forward to this for like all winter. If someone looked at the direction of my life, you read this. If someone looked at the direction of my life, my calendar, my spending, my screen time, my stress, my priorities, would they conclude I'm following Jesus or just drifting with the crowd? Do you understand drift? I don't. I just know that, have you ever been to the ocean? You ever gone out in the ocean? Play with your kids in the ocean? You go out in the water, not even too far, and you're out there playing for even 5 minutes, and you turn around and look back for your towel. What's happened? You look and you're like, I thought we were right there, and your towel's over there. That's the thing about drift. You don't even know you're like it happened. Drift is natural. Following never is. Following is always intentional, and it's always a choice, and it's a constant choice. And just because you chose yesterday doesn't mean that preemptively selects you for choosing today. Because right now, your attention is being competed for more aggressively than any time in human history, and that's not accidental, that's intentional. Entire industries exist to keep you reacting. They want you to react, they want you to scroll, they want you to compare, and they want you to consume. And whether we realize it or not, we give our attention to, whatever we give our attention to is ultimately going to shape our direction, our views, and our beliefs and how we live. And so at Gathering Point, we have intentionally become very consumed with taking this one thing. Jesus only asked to make us into one thing. I thought it'd make us, better, kinder, nicer, all this. No, he just said, I want to make you into one thing, and that one thing is a disciple. Not perfect people, not religious experts, not spiritual influencers. Disciples. People who are learning to walk in Jesus' direction, which raises some questions for us. It raises questions for me. Where am I really headed? What is shaping me? I don't even know. And what would it look like for me to take a step? That's why here at Gathering Point, we've created like a simple discipleship assessment, not as like a test, like, oh, you passed, now you failed. No, but just as a label to help you know, like, where am I? And we've paired that, where you can take that, and then we'll pair you with a mentor, not an expert, just people that may be a little further down the road than you are, maybe even just a year further down the road than you are, where they can come alongside of you and you can ask your questions and just kind of move with this. Because here's what we believe. Discipleship isn't about arriving. It's more about choosing a direction. Unfollowing isn't about deleting everything or rejecting everything. It's about creating space to notice Jesus again. And that takes intentionality, and you're going to need a plan, and you're going to need to be proactive about that. Because discipleship doesn't begin with trying harder. It begins with paying attention. And right now, your attention is captured in a million other places. So let's go back. Let's imagine that crowd we talked about at the beginning. Everyone all walking in the same direction, same pace, same pressure. Imagine yourself in that crowd, and you're walking in that crowd, and here we are. Oh man, it's crowded. And you encounter Jesus in that crowd, and Jesus says, follow me. Not someday, not when your life slows down, not when you have it all figured out. Now. This is why today and the next couple weeks matters, because this is why unfollowing some things matters, because Jesus is not going to wait for your life to simplify. You already know this. Spoiler alert for your life. It's not going to. I talk to retired people all the time. They go, boy, I thought my life was going to get simpler. Then they laugh. Man, I'm busier, more complex now than ever. Jesus isn't waiting for your life to simplify. He calls you, he called the guys in the middle of it, not to abandon your responsibility, but to reorder what comes first in your life. That is the heart of discipleship, is reorienting what comes first in your life. So we have to ask, what is shaping your life right now? Because following Jesus doesn't always mean walking away from something, but it for sure shooting means, it does mean deciding who you're walking with. So when Jesus says, follow me, he's inviting ordinary people like you and like me to turn around in the middle of the crowd that you're hanging and walking and working and sporting, and walk in a different direction. Not because everyone else is wrong, but because Jesus is leading us somewhere else. Growing up, we learned this little song as kids. It's just this little song that we would play. I don't know if you know it. If you know it, this is going to be like flashback, and you're going to be like, man, I haven't heard that in forever. And if you don't know it, you're going to be like, boy, that's obscure. So there we go. It was this little song that we sang as kids in kids' church, and it was called I Have Decided. Anybody heard this? Like, I have decided to follow Jesus. I have, and it went up to like notes that people shouldn't sing. Decided to follow Jesus. I have decided to follow Jesus. And then there's this phrase that says, no turning back, no turning back. Then it went on, and it was like, the cross before me, oh, so you know it. Some of you do. Some of you are like, I don't know, I can go to that church. Right? Cross before me, the world behind me. The cross before me, behind me. And we sang this song that began to talk about this decision that we had to make. And we were taught as children, like, you're going to have to decide who and what is going to have your attention. And it's not just something we add, like another follower. What is going to capture and influence you and your family the most? And so we talked a little bit about the discipleship and call thing today. So we started doing this last year, and honestly, I wasn't real sure about it. And Pastor Matt said, you know, what if we just have people like write on the prayer request cards, I have decided, and stick it to the cross. And I said, that's great, but those are for prayer requests. He goes, well, what if we just like made an exception? I don't love it. He won, I lost. And we've created this new component here where you can privately write on a piece of paper, I have decided, put your name. Prayer request, you don't have to put your name on, but this we kind of need to know. Your phone number, email address. Pastor Dane, Pastor Mark, David, Lindsay. Someone will contact you, usually within a week. And I say, hey, we saw that you wrote I have decided on your card, and we'd like for you to take an assessment. And you'll go, oh, I don't know about that. That sounds kind of like an assessment. And I'll probably be like, yeah, it does, because the word's assessment. But it's not a judgmental thing. It's to help you connect with somebody and we'll pair you with somebody after you take it, and they can just go, so here's where you are, and these are the complexities of your life. It's not therapy. It's not a counselor. It's not even it's just like a spiritual friend that you may meet with like 4 or 5 times in a year, tops, that just goes, yeah, I know. It's hard, isn't it? It's hard. Life's hard. And you go, but how do you integrate Jesus into this? Oh, yeah, great question. Yeah, and how do you, like, when you pray and like all of this, because here's what we found over the years, like we could class and we could do all these things and those have their place, but sometimes I just need to have not even a group, but just like a space to ask. And so I think we want to start this year not by like in youth group growing up, they would be like, hey, if you're really serious about following Jesus, you need to throw away all your bad CDs. And some people, my wife was even like, those were expensive. Right? And, for her specifically, it was like, but Journey, I like Journey. Some of these probably, but what'd they do? Really? This is just about where is your attention? Who is influencing you? And here's what I already know about you by your proximity this morning, whether in this room or online. You're not averse to Jesus. You already know you need Jesus. You're just hopelessly distracted by a million other things. And this is my invitation in the power of the Holy Spirit going, let's call a quick time out and let's look where our eyes are focused on and how long our eyes are focused on. And maybe even bring a little intentionality to this and invite somebody to help us along the way. Not for guilt, but for hope. So today, as we close, we're going to sing a song together. And if you want to go and write that on the prayer request and pin it to the cross, we'll contact you. If you have other things going on in your life that's just kind of triggered some stuff and you're like, man, I need to give this to Jesus, or I need help with this, or God help us here, or all this, feel free to write those on the prayer request. Others of you may want to take, and just out of gratitude, the body and blood of Jesus. The communion, the Eucharist is at all of our stations around the room, and you're invited. There's no course you have to take communion. Communion's the most inclusive meal in the world. Everyone's invited to the Lord's table if you believe that Jesus is Lord. Or maybe you just want to light a candle. Some of you have a tradition of candle lighting, others of you don't. Where you go, Lord, I just need light in this situation, and you may want to pray a prayer and light a candle. We're not going to tell you what you should and shouldn't do. That's not how this works. We just know when you're ready, you're ready and you need to move. So this morning, I'm going to pray. We're going to sing. And you're free to respond or sit or sing. So would you stand with me this morning as I pray a prayer over you today? Father, we're glad and grateful that you're our God, and thank you so much for meeting us where we are. And some of us, we're out by the lake getting our nets ready. Some of us are just working at the tax booth. We're just doing the most normal things in our life. When we were focused and we were strategizing, we were in it. We were doing our best. And then along you came and invited us to change the direction of where our attention has been focused. So Jesus, in this room this morning, would you send your Holy Spirit to invite people to take a step, to turn around and follow you? We love you, Jesus. Amen.